The mid-sized town she grew up in had to have more, she thought, as she desperately tried to get her loans for college. Jen knew that if she was accepted, that this would be her chance to bigger and better things in life. As she opened the letters from different colleges, she grew with joy as she was accepted into a small but prominent college on the East Coast. Upon arriving at college, she found out just how the little money she had saved went quickly, thus forcing her to look for work. Jobs were scarce in the town, so she had to take what she could get, as she took a job in the local diner working the night shift. She knew that she was attractive, standing 5 feet 9 inches tall with long legs. Her blonde hair flowed about her face, accenting her deep green eyes. The work was hard and the clients were cheap when it came to tips, so she started looking outside town as soon as she could. The club she applied at had a large clientele of prominent patrons who were polite and tipped well. After working there for a couple of weeks, she noticed a handsome gentleman who always ate alone. Being short-staffed on night, she had the opportunity to wait on him. His name was John, and he was tall with dark hair and hazel eyes, that caught her attention and had her transfixed from the moment she looked into them. He spoke with a soft voice that was hypnotizing, and she became instantly attracted to him. After a few weeks and small talk, he asked her out, and without hesitation she said yes. Their first date was tremendous. He picked her up in a white convertible and took her up the coast to a secluded restaurant on the beach where they watched the sun set as they ate. As they strode along the beach after dinner, she discovered that he came from a very rich family with old money, the kind that always keeps on making more. Jen knew right then and there she had found the right man to make her dreams come true, and with that in her mind she decided that she would do what she had to do, keep him for herself. The kiss goodnight sent shivers down her spine. This is the one, she thought, as she tried to fall asleep. On the third date she decided that she would let all of her feminine charm hang out. Their passion for each other grew, and finally he asked her to marry him and she accepted. Their wedding was huge and her family was surprised by the man she had chosen to be her husband. The honeymoon was even better as he spirited her away to a small island in the South Pacific where they loved passionate love on the secluded beaches. Jen's life was now a dream turned reality, no money worries, the country club life, and 2 beautiful children. Their love life was great and he always found new ways to surprise her, but as the youngest of her children entered college she began to feel a loneliness that was hard to explain. She felt her life was becoming routine. Jen loved the shopping and the evenings with her friends, but these two were becoming a drag. Saturday mornings were always the same. John would go to the country club and play golf with friends while she worked in the house or had tea or drinks with the other wives in the neighborhood. While working out back she noticed that the new neighbor was trimming his hedges and she found herself gazing at him. To get a better look she went upstairs to her room where she could see his whole yard as he worked. His tan was deep and his hair dark with the looks of a builder. The day came when she couldn't control herself, and after her husband left for his Saturday golf match, she put on a very sheer sundress. The plan was a simple one: go out back and ask him if he would mind helping her move some of the lawn furniture to the other side of the yard, and with that she walked around the hedges and approached him. To her surprise he did not see her at first, but when she spoke he turned with a big smile. His eyes were dark blue and they began to trace her as they spoke. As they went to her yard to move the furniture she could feel him looking at her as the sun penetrated her dress. After they were finished he suggested that they return to his place where he could get them something cold to drink. Without a word she followed him back. Entering the kitchen felt like entering an ice box. Her body shivered as she waited for her drink. She followed him to the den where she sat down on the leather couch. It seemed like an eternity had passed since he had poured the first drink. As she finished she stood and reached for him. His hands were strong as he took her in his arms and kissed her passionately. He guided her backwards toward the couch. Can you guess what happens next? She had to return home and get cleaned up before her husband returned home. Jen was in the kitchen when John got home, fixing his favorite meal, looking as good as ever. Asking what the occasion was she just replied she had missed him. That night Jen laid there thinking of the afternoon as she tried to please her husband, but had to sneak off after he fell asleep. Jen's busy social life had to be kept up as she planned each encounter with exacting skill, as she thought. Late Saturday evening John told Jen that he had to be at the club to close a business deal and that if she wanted to come they would have dinner after, but instead she told him this would give her a chance to do some extra shopping and surprise him. John left her noticing as soon as she said shopping she became very excited like she had already planned something. Running up the steps Jen looked out back and saw Doug working in his yard and put on one of her sundresses and hurried toward him. Driving toward the country club John realized that he had forgotten his briefcase and had to go back for it. Entering the house he looked for Jen hoping to change her mind, but what he saw when he looked out the bedroom window was his wife and Doug. Anger welled in him, but instead of screaming he grabbed his camera and proceeded to film her in the act, knowing this would be the leverage he needed to punish her for her indiscretions. Closing the deal was difficult but he managed, and on the way home he started to think how he would exact his revenge. A few weeks had passed when one of the neighbors noticed that John seemed distracted and asked if there was anything he might be able to do for him. With that John explained his predicament. Doug listened intently then asked John to come to his place for a drink to calm his nerves and let him explain what might be done to fix things. Doug's wife Sharon fixed them all a drink while Doug told Sharon what had happened and with a smile she looked at John and explained just how Doug had straightened her out with the help of the other wives and she would be more than happy to help if he was up to putting his wife in her place to keep his family together. John listened as Sharon explained that when she was caught by Doug about 10 years ago that one of the neighbor ladies suggested to him that her and her girlfriends would be more than happy to help, and to that they did. Sharon told John that it was just the lesson she needed and that she had also found that she was a lot more open to trying new things now with whatever someone wanted as long as Doug was included. Taking the next couple of weekends off Doug set up the deal with the other wives as their husbands gladly listened. The best part of the planning came when the guys explained that the only thing they wanted to do is watch the movie, and with that the women played the videos of their lessons. John watched with amazement as the women explained that only a woman could push another woman to the limits and beyond, not noticing the men had left. John watched as each of the women showed him their video. The last video came to an end with John about to burst when then women approached him and told him to relax that things would be alright. Returning home not only well satisfied but with a new meaning to life, John explained that they were going to throw a party the next weekend. The day of the party was gorgeous and the guests were having a great time, when John asked Jen to step into the den. Jen was in shock when John played the tape and began to cry when she heard the door to the den open and Sharon, Anna, and Angel entered. The women asked Jen if she was okay and she replied that she had done something wrong and wished to be left alone with John to see what could be worked out. With that the women left without another word. It had been an hour when John returned and told her the guest had gone home and then asked her what she intended on doing about her behavior. Knowing all too well that this meant her life as she knew it was over, Jen told him she would do anything he asked to keep her rich way of life. That's just what he wanted to hear as he smiled at her. Walking toward her he told her to stand up and moved to the middle of the room. As she did he turned all the lights on and opened the drapes to the night. She entered the master room where to her surprise all the lights were out. This seemed strange especially when she heard the door lock behind her. Jen started to speak when the lights came on. Standing in front of her were the three women who were supposed to be her friends. Can you guess what happens next? The next morning, as she looked around the room she saw the flowers on the dresser. Crossing the room she found a note taped to the mirror. It was simple: she could take the check and go or she could stay. Reaching down Jen picked up the collar and placed it around her neck and dressed for the new life. Entering the kitchen she found the coffee on and a note beside her cup. She opened it up and it read, "I will always love you." Smiling Jen called her husband at work and after telling him how much she loved him she asked him one final question: who's next? As she hung up and tasted her coffee she knew there would be another and she would have her turn.